Dhamma greetings. My name is Rahula. I'm a student of Bhikkhu Candana, and I just wanted to share a thank you before watching, and just to let you know that Bhikkhu Candana is a wandering monk, and he basically depends totally on donations for food, shelter, transport, and medicine. So if you find this video beneficial and it's fruitful in your life, a dana or donation would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So enjoy.
Today we continue our Sutta Exploration series with I believe it's week 75, since we started these series over 2 years ago, I think. Today we return back to the middle length discourses, which we haven't done in a while, for a while. And this happens to be, again, a very special sutta, one that I have had a difficulty deciding whether I wanted to include it, because I wanted to present a new translation of it. It is the Raṭṭhapāla Sutta, a very beautiful sutta, a giant among suttas. And when we cover it today, you'll see as to why it's a giant. But this week I was able to finish the translation after putting it off for so many years. But I'm glad I was able to do it, and then for today to be able to share it with you. I'm going to try not to speak as much because it's a long sutta, and it's a beautiful sutta. And you'll see as to why. So Raṭṭhapāla is the name of a young man, of a man basically, in India at the time of Lord Buddha, the son of a very, very rich a set of parents, basically mother and father, and he's their only son. And he goes along with a group of householders to greet Lord Buddha when Lord Buddha and the Sangha of bhikkhus were passing through their region, their country. And everything starts from there when they see, when they hear, when they listen to Lord Buddha giving a talk on the Dhamma. That's when everything changes, and the story begins from there. Raṭṭhapāla was known, just put it quickly in there, as one of the 80 special foremost, we call it in English, 80 bhikkhus. We also have the category of bhikkhunis. We also have, for lay male disciples, a category for each of these 4 groups of the Sangha, and obviously for the lay women, upasikas. So the foremost, the chief in this quality, in that quality. And Lord Buddha took the time to designate those qualities per person. And that means quite a lot, because that also indicates how, contextually speaking, that Lord Buddha did not just teach people and like faceless students in a sense. He knew each and every one of them. That's why he's able to give this designation. In the case of Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, he was designated by Lord Buddha as one of the 80 foremost students, bhikkhus, in his category, which was the quickest in going forth based on what hearing the Dhamma did for him. So going forth, what we mean by, in Pali, it's pabbajja, meaning to become a recluse, to become a renunciant, to want to give up the lay life. So he was the fastest. Usually people would take longer time to process this, but he reached that that conviction based off of the faith that arose in his heart from just hearing Lord Buddha give a speech once. So in that sense, he was known as the foremost in deciding to go forth based on what happened to him. So he was the quickest. So that's how Venerable Raṭṭhapāla is usually remembered in the Sasana, the dispensation of Lord Buddha. And of course, the story that goes along with it makes it even more poignant, which is why we're going to be doing this today. And see if you could remember, it's not just for going forth and becoming a monastic. That's not necessarily what we mean by going forth, because you could be a monastic for all intents and purposes. Someone would look at you, you know, you have your shaved head, you have your robes, you live a certain way, but you could be living, as far as the Dhamma is concerned, very much like a lay person, very much attached to titles and this and that, possessions. So that doesn't mean necessarily that you've really gone forth. Whereas you could be a lay person, still going to a 9-to-5 job, but you're very much are going forth away from those attachments and those identifications. You're walking away, you're renouncing them, which is another word in Pali. We have Nikāya, giving it up, not becoming identified with those things. So please don't think, oh, okay, Raṭṭhapāla was a monk, or became a monk, so basically I'm not a monk, so therefore it doesn't relate to me. That's not correct. That wouldn't be a right way of thinking, because this sutta, this discourse, has a lot to give, a lot to help us in living our own lives, individual lives, irrespective of what position in society you might occupy. And so I'll leave it at that, and as I start the sutta today. So this comes from the middle length discourses, so Majjhima Nikāya, MN 82. Raṭṭhapāla Sutta. Raṭṭhapāla. I have personally heard this. At one time, the Blessed One was walking through the Kuru country with a large sangha of bhikkhus. When he arrived at the town of Kurus, named Tullakotthita, then the news quickly spread as the Brahmin householders of Tullakotthita heard that the Blessed One, having walked through the Kuru country, has now arrived with a large sangha of bhikkhus at their town of Tullakotthita. Further, they discussed how a good report has spread about the recluse Gautama, that the Blessed One, being the son of the Sakyans, and having gone forth from the royal Sakyan clan, has already gained the delightful reputation for being an Arahant, the perfectly awakened one, endowed with sublime knowledge and supremely pure conduct, the well-gone, the knower of worlds, the incomparable tamer of those to be tamed, the teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. And having realized and understood this world with direct knowledge, together with its gods and humans, Maras, Brahmas, as well as the community of recluses and Brahmins, he reveals it, making it known for everyone. He teaches the Dhamma that is beautiful in its beginning, beautiful in its middle, and beautiful in its end. He does this while giving its full and correct meaning and phrasing, clearly revealing thus the spiritual life that is utterly perfect and pure. Therefore, it would be wonderful indeed to be able to see such arahants. So this is the householders of Tullakotthita that are discussing this, and so we'll see what they'll do next. Excuse me. In this manner, the householders of Tullakotthita went and approached the Blessed One. Once there, some of these householders paid homage to the Blessed One, and after exchanging cordial and friendly greetings with him, they sat to one side, meaning they had their hands in Anjali, they bowed 3 times. Typically, that's what you do when you see a bhikkhu, and Lord Buddha was a bhikkhu, of course. And then they say, Bhante, how's your health? Are you finding our, let's say in this case, our Kuru country pleasant? to abide in? Do you have a place to stay, etc.? And welcome to our town or village. And then they would pull aside to give room for others to come face to face with Lord Buddha. But you see this kind of a encounter in numerous suttas where this was the group that felt like they were moved by the report that I just shared with you earlier about them hearing this description about who Gautama the Buddha is, or the recluse at least, samana. So then you're going to see not everyone in the village, the householders, came with that approach, but they nevertheless came because they want to know who this person is. So they don't have that much saddha, that much faith and conviction in the recluse Gautama yet, as demonstrated by what we'll see next. Others extended their joint palms greeting the Blessed One while standing, and then sat to one side. That's a little bit less respectful thing to do, where from afar you're still being cordial, you're not being obscene, you're not being disrespectful per se, but still not as respectful towards a bhikkhu as you could. Still others announced who they were as well as their clan's name, and then quietly went and sat to one side. Some from afar, they said, "Oh, Venerable, my last name is this and this, and we're from this town as well, and welcome." And then this is while they're standing, perhaps not even giving an anjali. So, and then going and finding a place to sit. Once everyone was seated, the Blessed One instructed them with his encouraging words, as he inspired them by gladdening and lightening up the hearts and minds of the householders of Tulakotita with his moving discourse on the Dhamma. Meanwhile, the son of the clan's chief, Raṭṭhapāla, was there, seated with them in that gathering, and it suddenly occurred to him, the way I see and understand the Dhamma instructed by the Blessed One, it is not easy to lead the holy life in its completeness, in all its purity, living a blameless and stainless life, while I still continue being a householder. Now, what if I go ahead and shave my head and beard, put on the bhikkhu's maroon robes, and go forth by leaving the household life and becoming homeless? This is him reflecting. Then the Brahmin householders of Tulakotita, having been instructed by the Blessed One with his encouraging words, which inspired them, while gladdening and lightening up their hearts and minds, arose from their seats and delightedly paid their respect to him. This means everyone. You don't see those, divisions in the crowd. So here you see everybody was moved based on the report here. And after circumambulating, walking around Lord Buddha 3 times, the Blessed One, while keeping him to their right side, they left. And that is the normal way of going around a chaitya or a pagoda or a stupa. That's how you would do it. The remains or the relics of a teacher that you respect. That's how they do it. If you go on a pilgrimage, let's say, especially to India, that is what you will see people doing. After they pay their respect, they usually circumambulate 3 times, and then while keeping their right side towards the object being revered. Soon after the Brahmin householders of Tulakotita had gone, the chief clansman's son, the householder Raṭṭhapāla, approached the Blessed One, and after worshipping him with his head at the teacher's feet, he sat on one side and addressed the Blessed One by saying, "Bhante, the way I see and understand the Dhamma instructed by the Blessed One, it is not easy to lead the holy life in its completeness, in all its purity, living a blameless and stainless life, while I still continue being a householder. Now I desire to go ahead and shave my head and beard, put on the bhikkhu's maroon robes." And some people might not like the maroon. I wanted to put it in there because the Pali word is kasa. Kasa, the color, is actually orangey yellow. Sometimes they call it reddish. And this is also in respect of Venerable Anya Kundanya, whose robes as we know it, were maroon colored. So this goes way, Venerable Anya Kondanya was the very first Bhikkhu other than Lord Buddha, and obviously the first one to have the eye of Dhamma Chakku, the very first among the Arahants. So out of respect, so Kasa is the term. So maroon robes, and go forth by leaving the household life and becoming homeless. Therefore, Bhante, I kindly ask to be given the going forth and the higher ordination. That's the upasampada, the higher ordination, which makes a person be called, recognized as a bhikkhu. Look at what Lord Buddha responds, how he responds. Raṭṭhapāla, have you already obtained the permission to go forth from home life into homelessness from your mother or father? Parents' permission. Bhante, I have not obtained the permission to go forth from home life into homelessness from either my mother or father. This is unusual for many people to hear even today. When people ask me about my own ordination, and when I tell them that I did not get my parents, my father's, because he was the only one alive, I did not receive his permission for over 20 years. They're stunned. Like, why didn't you? You're a grown man. You could have gone and ordained. It shouldn't matter. Well, there's this rule. This is set up by Lord Buddha himself. So out of respect to parents. So here we see this. And that rule actually came into place when his own father, Siddhartha Gautama's father, King Suddhodana, came to Venerable, Lord Buddha and said, why did you ordain your son? Why did you have Rahula go forth? You've taken away from me my son, meaning you, who is now the Buddha, and then you took away the only hope I had, that I was going to keep this kingdom in my family. You don't, that's not right. But fortunately, the king was already a Sotapanna. And so he was saying it out of respect as well. But he said, please make me this promise that in the future, whoever's going to go forth, they will do so after having obtained the permission from their parents. And Lord Buddha agrees to it right then and there. And he says, let it be so. So after that moment, when he gave his word to his father, that became part of the ordination requirement. So anyhow, just a side note for you to be aware of as to why is this important, especially in the 21st century. Everything is about individuality. So if you want something, you go do it. You shouldn't care for other people's opinion. No, in a time period where parents have lost their significance in our lives by the dictates of society and how fickle it is, and all these crazy and idiotic family tearing new norms or mores coming about by society, this is a good eye-opener as to the significance of one's parents. So just to bear that in mind. So Lord Buddha just said, the going forth will not happen unless you get your permission from your parents. In that case, Bhante, I will go and obtain my parents' permission for the going forth. Then the householder's son, Raṭṭhapāla, arose from his seat and paid homage to the Blessed One, and as he then circumambulated him and left to go speak with his parents. So he's thinking, this is no big deal. I'm my parents' favorite. Well, I'm the only son, so I'm their, they love me. So whatever I say, they've never said no to me. So this is going to be a breeze. With that mindset, he's going because his heart is so full of saddha. Because he made the choice, and it's not something impulsive that he could go ahead and switch tomorrow on, change his opinion on. This is a lifelong, he considered it, this is a lifelong journey he's embarking on. Yes, it was sudden, but it moved him. And we'll see as we go further into the sutta as to why. What was said by Lord Buddha that really shook him down to his roots. So he's happy, he's exhilarated, he found his teacher, he found the goal of his life. And he knows what to be done, and he took the step, he took that road. But that was not enough. The decision was not enough. He needs the permission now. So he's going home. So once there, he approached both his mother and father, and said, "Mother and father, the way I see," so he repeats the whole thing about, "I see and understand the Dhamma instructed by the Blessed One. It is not easy to lead the holy life in its completeness, in all its purity, living a blameless and stainless life, while I still continue being a household. Now I desire to go ahead and shave my head and beard, put on the bhikkhu's maroon robes, and go forth by leaving the household life and becoming homeless." Then, having expressed his desire to his parents thus, the clansman Raṭṭhapāla's parents turned to him and said, "Dearest Raṭṭhapāla, you are our only son, and you are very precious to us, and we love you very much. You have been a cause for much delight for us, bringing us so much joy and pleasure, as we raised you with such happiness as well as comfort. Therefore, our dear Raṭṭhapāla, you have no idea about suffering and the absence of pleasure and delight, because they know what, he was raised, he was pampered, he's babied up until that age, He doesn't worry about food, he doesn't worry about finding a lodging, a home, a pillow to sleep on, and all the comforts that come along with being the chief clansman's son, who's wealthy. So the parents continue, "So please, please come, Raṭṭhapāla, continue partaking of these pleasures, enjoying all the delight that sensual pleasures could offer you, while you can still go ahead and engage as much as you like in merit-building actions. So stay a householder, have the money, and go ahead. If you want to help live the religious life, go ahead and do dana. Go and do good deeds." That was the way of thinking. That still is, and now, unfortunately, this has penetrated. This interpretation of living a spiritual life has also penetrated into the sasana, where you have even bhikkhus, Theravada bhikkhus, mind you, who are teaching their students to just do that last portion, meaning do merit-building actions, good actions that are full of metta and karuna, and that's it. That's terrible. This is not necessarily Dhamma. This is found in all religions. I don't know of any particular religion that denies, the importance of doing wholesome deeds, but majority of them stop there, if not all. So this is dangerous, but this was where they were coming from. So to live a spiritual life, you could just do that. So while you're a householder, so you don't need to go and give all this up. So, and then they say, "We do not give you our permission to go forth. After all, already we dread the day that we will lose each other and not see you anymore. So how could we even tolerate you going forth from home life into homelessness while we are still alive? That means it's going to be torture for us. At least, when you're, they didn't say that, but if you're dead, we know you're dead, and we can grieve and lament till the end of our days. But to see that you're a monk and maybe even see you trying to look for food as a beggar, that's going to destroy us. Plus, you're not living with us. You're not going to give us any grandchildren, etc., etc. So in many ways, you can look at it on a sociological sense as also quite selfish of them, because they want to just, be happy. You're creating a change in their homeostasis, in their life. You're creating a new scenario, and not a pleasant one for them, because they're not used to that, and they're probably in their in those days, 40 or 50 years old. In those days, it was like an elder. So they're like waiting for grandkids. So they're looking for somebody to pass the wealth and everything to, and their name too. And you just are about to take that away from them? Oh, no, no, no. You're not going to get our permission. So these might be some of the things that are playing in the background. For the second time, and up to the third time, Raṭṭhapāla addressed his mother and father while requesting. The same thing is repeating, and because it's a repeat, I don't want to say it because just to save time, but I highly recommend you read it because, by the way, again, the PDF is available on the website, mindreleased.com. So anyhow, so he says again, I desire to go ahead and shave my head and beard and put on the robes, and please. Thus, having expressed his desire to his parents for a second and the third time, the clansman Raṭṭhapāla's parents turned to him and said for a second and third time, dearest Raṭṭhapāla, you are our only son, etc., etc. And so please come, continue enjoying all these pleasures, enjoying all the delight and sense pleasures they could offer you, while still engaging in living a full householder's life and doing merit building actions. So we're not going to give you our permission to go forth. Then, not having obtained his parents' permission, the householder Raṭṭhapāla thought to himself, well, it seems that my parents are set on their decision to not give me their permission. So he decided to just lay down on the floor, refusing to eat or drink, as he exclaimed to them, either I go forth from home life into homelessness, or I die right here in front of you. Because if you don't give me the permission to go forth, you will only have my dead body left for you. The only way for you to remove me from here. He's decided. The decision is made. He's set. Then the householder, Raṭṭhapāla's parents again said, again, the same thing. Please come. What are you doing? We still are not going to give you our permission. Because we cannot tolerate you being away from our sight. Yes, we're going to die at the end, but we are already afraid of that possibility. But you want to speed that process? You want to bring that closer to now, where we don't ever get to see you again while we're still alive? One of the worst things that a parent fears is to lose or to even have their child get sick, get injured, and they're there still left intact, the parents, let alone the child dying. That's one of the worst fears of a parent. They're alive, the parent is still alive, and they're carrying the body of their own child. This is a nightmare for all loving parents, all across cultures. And that's their fear. So one can put oneself in their shoes and look at it from their side. Remember, these are putujanas. These are not individuals who have faith or saddha in the Dhamma. And their son just came to them and expressed this. For them, it's a different culture. It's unacceptable. So no permission for you. So they say, so please get up from the floor, dear Raṭṭhapāla, come and eat, drink, and enjoy yourself to the fullest, and just stop this. Having heard his parents' refusal again, Raṭṭhapāla became quiet and said no more. Then for a second and a third time, both his mother and father said to him, so they repeat the whole request and their decision as well not to give him permission. So, and then the last portion of it, so please get up from the floor, Raṭṭhapāla, come, stop this. But the householder Raṭṭhapāla continued to remain silent and said nothing to them, while lying down on the floor motionless. Then, getting desperate, both mother and father of the householder Raṭṭhapāla decided to go and see their son's friends. beseeching them to talk to Raṭṭhapāla in an attempt to have him change his mind, while telling them, "Your dear friend Raṭṭhapāla has now thrown himself onto the floor, lying down and refusing to get up. He is telling us, either I go forth from home life into homelessness, or I die right here in front of you. Because if you don't give me the permission to go forth, you will only have my dead body left for you. The only way for you to remove me from here. So please, good sirs, come, talk to your dear friend Raṭṭhapāla by telling him, our dear friend Raṭṭhapāla, you are the only son your parents have. You are very precious to them, and they love you very much. You have been a cause for much delight for them, as you have brought them so much joy and pleasure, and they have raised you with such happiness as well as comfort. Therefore, dear Raṭṭhapāla, you have no idea about suffering and the absence of pleasure and delight. You become rich to experience pleasure and delight, to eradicate suffering. It's amazing that 2,600 years ago, people still had what we have today. When a person becomes rich, what are they becoming rich for? Ultimately, it's to have less and less and less and less possibilities for suffering to creep in. Of course, that's always a failed attempt, because most such people are on some type of medication, or on some type of a drug, or some type of a nasty, toxic addiction. But it's interesting how pleasure and delight keeps coming up as one of the criteria, or criteria, two of the criteria of being rich. So time hasn't changed that about the human condition. So then Raṭṭhapāla's friends, all agreeing to help their friends' parents, quickly went and approached Raṭṭhapāla and said, so they repeat the whole thing to Raṭṭhapāla, and then they add, please get up from the floor, dear Raṭṭhapāla, come, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself to the fullest, and just stop this. But the householder Raṭṭhapāla continued to remain silent and said nothing to them, while lying down on the floor motionless, refusing to eat or drink. Then for a second and a third time, Raṭṭhapāla's friends repeated their plea to him. And again, I'm not reading that section, but he, so please get up, and he's refusing. And for a second and a third time, the householder Raṭṭhapāla continued to remain silent and said nothing to them, while lying down on the floor, motionless, refusing to eat or drink. Now, the sutta doesn't say how long it took for him to be lying down on the floor, but it definitely was not a day. Sometimes people think it was just an afternoon or a day, or he just went there in the morning, so he's still lying down on in the central courtyard, maybe motionless, but it is highly doubtful that that was the case. To drive your parents to become that desperate to go and call upon your friends and try to find them and beseech them requires more than a few hours. And so you need to make them desperate, and you have to push them. So he must have been pushing them by becoming weaker and weaker. And as we see in a minute, he must have been there for some time. So then, on witnessing this, Raṭṭhapāla's friends went back to his mother and father and reported. Mother and father, that's how they used to refer to it. It doesn't matter if, sometimes they would say uncle or auntie, but in this case, in the sutta, they referred to their friend's mother and father as mother and father. The clansman Raṭṭhapāla is still lying on the floor, refusing to eat, as he continues insisting, so either I go forth, or you just take, my dead body out of there. So it's, I'll get up on my, dead body. So the way we see it, this is very interesting. The way we see it, if you insist on not giving him your permission to go forth from home life into homelessness, then surely he will indeed die right there on the spot. So these are good friends, from the sound of it, who've seeing that this is not our fellow Raṭṭhapāla that we grew up with. This is not him just, wanting that golden chariot, maybe. I want that wealthy thing. I want that palace. I want it. I want it. It's not something like that. This is real. And they might lose their friend, and the parents might very well lose their son. So they say, however, if you do give him your permission to go forth from home life into homelessness, then at the very least, you will still get to see him again, albeit in the form of a recluse. Still your son, however, but one who has gone forth. What a beautiful argument. But if one day Raṭṭhapāla were to become displeased and unhappy, this is the thing which kind of really touched their vanity, I guess, or their desire to have him stay as a layman. So, but they're adding this caveat. But if one day Raṭṭhapāla were to become displeased and unhappy with living the holy life, dissatisfied with living the life of a recluse, and not knowing what to do, he would then know where to come to. For you would still be here for him, still being his parents. So you see, given the situation, it would be much better if you could just give him your permission to go forth from home life into homelessness. So it's in a way, there's still a win situation here for you, parents. Because chances are, because he was raised rich, he's not going to stay there for long. Okay? So sooner or later, he's going to come back knocking on your door. Please, mommy, daddy, take me back. That's what the parents want to hear. Probably that's what they heard from all that. And they're wishful thinking. So in that case, these are the parents' response. In that case, dear ones, we do give Raṭṭhapāla our permission to go forth from home life into homelessness. This is such a blessing to hear. I still have my parents, my father's permission. I recorded it because I couldn't believe my ears when he said yes. Of course I give you permission. I was like, can I record it? So he said yes. So I recorded. So it's a blessing to hear this. But this is like the caveat that the parents are adding. Look at this. But he should come and visit us often. We're giving him permission, but he must come back and visit us. Okay, that's the only term that we agreed. We would be okay with the permission giving. Then Raṭṭhapāla's friends quickly went back to their friend and reported, "Rise up, Raṭṭhapāla, dear friend, you have it. Your parents have now given you the permission to go forth from home life into homelessness. But once you have ordained and become a recluse, you must come back and see them often." Then Raṭṭhapāla, the household Raṭṭhapāla, delightedly got up, and after nourishing and regaining back his energy, that's why we know that it wasn't just a matter of a few hours. So he must have been fasting, not even drinking water. He was deliberate. He was so convinced that he would die there. That's why Lord Buddha gave him that designation of the foremost in wanting to go forth based out of faith. He knew for sure that it's either ordaining or dying. That is strong adhitthana. So he quickly went and approached the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, sat to one side and said, "Bhante, I have now received the permission from both my parents to go forth from home life into homelessness." Thus, Raṭṭhapāla was able to receive the going forth as well as the higher ordination in the presence of the Blessed One. 2 weeks after conferring the higher ordination to the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, and having lived as long as he liked in Tulakotitha, the Blessed One left the monastery on a tour in the direction of Savatthi, which he did in stages. Once there, the Blessed One lived in the monastery offered by Anathapindika in Jeta's park. It was there that the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, while living secluded, withdrawn from all things offered by the world, and fully attentive, kept resolute in his practice. And before long, through his equally diligent dedication, he soon realized for himself the very truth, the very freedom, for the sake of which many good sons of families leave the home life for the correct reason and rightfully go forth into homelessness. Thus, he attained to the noble end of the holy life, as he finally understood it for himself in this very birth, in the here and now, knowing for sure with direct understanding. Birth is now finally destroyed. The holy life has been fully lived, with its goal achieved. There is no more coming back to any state of becoming. And in this way, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla became one of the perfect ones, the Arahants. This is why we're supposed to go forth. This is the only reason why we go forth. We're supposed to go forth. And that's why in this translation, I wanted to put those words there, for the correct reason. Then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla went and approached the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat to one side and said, Bhante, I wish to visit my mother and father, if the Blessed One gives me permission to do so. That is the proper way of doing it. Whenever there's a bhikkhu living and there are people around, if there are bhikkhus, the highest ranking bhikkhu or the eldest, people don't come in and out like that. Whether guests coming by, visiting, or especially bhikkhus coming, going out, etc. There's a proper protocol. The bhikkhu, the one in charge, is in charge because they need to know who's coming and who's going and what type of situations are there. So simply because Venerable Raṭṭhapāla attained arahantship, he couldn't just waltz in and out, including Venerable Sariputta, the chief disciple. So it's a requirement for the individual before they leave, even though it is something that is, in essence, we are always taught to go and take care of our parents. And in this case, he also had given his word to go and see his parents. So you can tell that this was like weighing down on him, like, okay, I want to go and see my parents, but that's secondary. The priority is becoming an arahant. His aditana did not wane. It didn't get less. He knew why he had become a bhikkhu. But nevertheless, he wants to come back to the parents, to the teacher, to Lord Buddha, and ask for his permission to leave. Even if it's temporary, departure from the monastery. This is interesting what's about to happen. Then the Blessed One looked into the heart of Raṭṭhapāla to see if there could be any chance that the situations he was to encounter on his journey by visiting his parents might in any way come to cloud the purity of the Dhamma in his heart. Lord Buddha knew. This was his check-in, by the way. We don't know if he had gone to kind of inform Lord Buddha that he's now an arahant, even though Lord Buddha would know before, because it's a big deal when a person attains to nobility, either Sotapatti, Sakadagami stage, Anagami stage, or especially Arahant. Lord Buddha would know. So we don't know if he had gone already and spoken to Lord Buddha, but we see it now. So we can presume, it's an assumption, that he's gone there and he's saying to Lord Buddha, Bhante, this is where I'm at, and I would like to go and pay a visit to my parents. So Lord Buddha is scanning his mind, his heart, because apparently Lord Buddha knows what is to come. Now, when a person becomes a Sotapanna, it's impossible for that person, if they're truly Sotapanna, it's impossible for them to break precepts. Now, when it comes to an Arahant, they completely eradicated all the Sangyojanas, all the fetters. So the Sotapanna has still 7 more to go. So it becomes a very difficult situation. If the circumstances are too intense for that person. But for an Arahant, that's never been an issue. Throughout the suttas, we never see an Arahant who had a change of heart, for example. But given what is to come next, and who knows what Lord Buddha saw as far as the karmic connections between his parents and his own karmic intentions and the seeds, good or bad, unwholesome or wholesome, that might have been laid in his past, Raṭṭhapālas, that might surface. Because simply because a person turned into, became an Arahant does not mean they will not encounter difficulties, sometimes even death. So Lord Buddha is seeing whether there's going to be any issues. Thus, having seen for certain that there would be no possibility whatsoever for Raṭṭhapāla to ever fall back by giving up the robes, by returning to lead a household life, he instructed Raṭṭhapāla by saying, Raṭṭhapāla, you may now go and do whatever you deem appropriate. Nothing's going to happen. And that's also a confirmation. We don't see Lord Buddha saying, yes, you're now an Arahant. He doesn't use those words, but he uses these words, which is tantamount to saying, I have no fears that you're going to go back to the lower life, becoming a householder again. That's a term, by the way, that is used constantly in the suttas. And then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla got up from his seat, and after paying his respect by circumambulating the Blessed One, he went and put his living quarters into order, and then took the alms bowl along with his outer robe as he left on a journey towards his hometown of Tulakotthita. After having traveled in stages, we can tell that it's somewhat far. They would spend sometimes a whole day to go from one stage to the next. And if it's stages in plural, so it tells us that it took several days to get back to his hometown. So after having traveled in stages, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla finally arrived there as he went and chose King Kauravya's deer hunting grounds of Tulakotthita as his place of dwelling. So he gets there, he puts his bowl, and he, maybe sets himself like a nice cushiony seat for him to meditate, maybe a shade of a tree, and to sleep there. So the next morning, having put on his robes and taking his alms bowl and outer robe with him, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla entered Tulakotthita to collect his meal. So he's going there with the intention to go visit his parents. He's not just going randomly from house to house, as we'll see here. As he approached his family's home, his father was at the main entrance to the hall of their mansion, combing his hair. So, probably not by himself. He has many servants and slaves, probably. Now, when the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's father saw him coming in the distance, he shouted with resentment, "Ah, it is because of you, shaven-headed ones, that I lost my one and only dear son, as you made him go forth." He didn't recognize his own son. He was never there when they shaved his head. So probably he never knew what his son looks like. Probably always saw him that he was always going to be wearing those fancy saris and the golden covered this and that, bejeweled. And his son is covered, is wearing probably, his robe is stitched up together in pieces from charnel grounds. An Arahant. So he didn't recognize him. In this manner, and at his own family home, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla was not provided with any morsels of food, and instead of being given an indifferent rejection or a polite refusal, he became the object of insults by none other than his own father. This shakes a person. This makes a person lament and sob, maybe. go back into his past and remember the walls, every nook and cranny as he's walking past their mansion, remembering the memories and the old situations and stories, how he grew up. And now he's being rejected, tossed out, not even being given food. That can shake a person, unless we're talking about an Arahant. So this you could see as one of the first shakeups that could have easily put him in a spin if he were not that developed spiritually. Anyhow, the sutta continues. Meanwhile, on seeing one of the female slaves of his earlier home in the process of throwing away some leftover food and stale bread, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla addressed her by saying, "Sister, if you're going to throw away that food, you could instead put it in my bowl." So he's requesting, if you're going to throw it away, he's not asking for food. She's about to toss it away. We're not allowed to ask unless we know the person, they know us, unless they're our student, unless an offer is being made. Would you like this, etc. But she's about to toss it away. It's rubbish, basically, for them. Now, as that female slave was putting the leftover food and stale bread into the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's bowl, she kept looking at the features of his hands and feet. And in hearing his voice, she suddenly recognized that it was, in fact, her old master, now the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, who had come back. She then quickly rushed back into the house to her mistress, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's mother, and exclaimed, "My noble lady, your noble son Raṭṭhapāla is here. He has indeed come back." And the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's mother then expressed her joy by telling her, "My child, if you are indeed telling me the truth, then I will make you a free woman and release you from slavery. If what you're saying is true, you're free." Then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's mother rushed outside and approached her husband, the Venerable's father, and told him, "Householder, do you know that our noble son Raṭṭhapāla has come back? He is here." Meanwhile, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla had already gone away and found the shade of a wall. And while seated under it, he was eating the leftover food with stale bread in seclusion. Then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's father came and found his son as he addressed the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla by saying, "My dearest Raṭṭhapāla, why are you eating that leftover food and stale bread? You do have a home you could return to, where you will be served the best of foods." I love Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's response. "And where, householder, would this home for the homeless be that you speak of? After all, we just came to your house. Yet not only did we not receive any morsels of food, or even an indifferent rejection or a polite refusal, but instead we were subjected to insults and abuse by none other than you, householder, my own father." That, does something to the person on the receiving end of such a powerful statement, such a truthful statement. "Come, my dear Raṭṭhapāla," this is the father, "let us go back to the house. Enough, householder. I already have finished my meal for today. Then, my dear Raṭṭhapāla, please accept tomorrow's meal at our house." And the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla accepted the invitation for the meal dana through his silence. On seeing that the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla had accepted his invitation for the next day's meal, his father went back to the house. Look what he's going to do. Once there, he gathered all the gold in their treasure house and piled them into separate mounds inside the home, covering them all with mats. Then he called to him the previous wives of the then clansman Raṭṭhapāla, advising them to adorn and prepare themselves to look beautiful and seductive, whereby his son would find them attractive and irresistible. The man still has hope, apparently. Next, He went and began seeing to it that the preparations were underway for the next day's meal, while making sure there would be all kinds of nourishing foods and drinks too, to be offered at his home. When it was already morning, the next day, the father went and approached the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla and informed him, "My dear Raṭṭhapāla, the food is now ready." Then, having put on his robes, and by taking his alms bowl and outer robe with him, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla entered his father's house, his old home, and sat on the prepared seat. So here there is a trap, as you can imagine, coming up. The mind has to be so equanimous. And now you can appreciate slowly, little by little, as to why Lord Buddha paused and looked into Raṭṭhapāla's heart. Meanwhile, his father reached over and pulled away the mats to reveal the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla the mounds of gold hidden underneath it, and said, "My dear son, this is the wealth you have inherited from your mother, and this is the wealth you have inherited from your father, and this is the wealth that you have inherited from your grandfather." So we can imagine how much wealth this is. Dear Raṭṭhapāla, you can enjoy all this wealth and make merits at the same time. Come, my son Raṭṭhapāla, give up these robes already. Take all this wealth that is yours and make as much merits as you like. Householder, this is Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's response. Householder, if you were to ask me, I would say, take all this gold you have amassed, put them into carts, and just dump them in a whirlpool in the middle of the Ganges. And why do I say this? Because, householder, gathering all this wealth has already caused you so much pain and grief, along with sorrow, lamentation, suffering, depression, and anguish. Next time you're about to head out on the freeway or in the bus or on the train to go to your job to make money, and you look around to pay for your bills, basically, and then you look around, people are running and running and running and running. For what? To gather all that gold from the bottom of the whirlpool in the middle of the Ganges, put it back on the trucks and bring them back to their house so that they have money, so that they can have hope that tomorrow they're going to have money to get their stuff, get their needs met, which is mostly wants, not needs. Majority of the people running after making money are just trying to have what Raṭṭhapāla has. But he saw something. He didn't care for what the money is supposedly going to bring. He saw the lamentation, the grief, the depression. I've worked with people along through different careers that I've had over the decades. And I've seen different types of addictions that people had. Sometimes, even as a teacher, as a school teacher, I had colleagues who would take psychiatric medication to make it through the day, in addition to going and smoking cigarettes every break they could find, in addition to going to happy hour to go and drink whiskey or to drink some wine, to drink something, to just numb themselves while they are trying to make money. But why are they drinking and taking drugs and medicine and actually drugs? Why? To hide the anguish, the depression, the lamentation, the dissatisfaction, which Venerable Raṭṭhapāla has. So we must stop believing what the media is throwing at us, the news, the propaganda, that you have to have this. No, I don't need to have this. If I have a car that takes me from point A to point B, I don't need to go into debt when this car is already paid for. Or I have very little payment left, or little that I have to pay every month, versus going and giving away my life. Now I have to buy a house, and I'm stuck for 30 years. I'm a slave. Mortgage, we call it in America. Mortgage. Because you're only going to come out of it dead. Mortuary. M-O-R-T. That's part. I always wondered about, why do we have that word? Why can't it be called rent or, dwelling fee? Because the only way you're going to feel like you paid for it is when you're coming out dead. Mortuary. Very few people really are able to pay off that debt. By the way, even if you pay it off, you still have to pay taxes. So you will never, ever, ever own the property. Try not to pay the taxes for a few years, or maybe even a year. You lose the house. Why did I suffer? So you see all these delusionary things, goals that we have when our lives are being sacrificed through anguish, depression, and we're just suppressing the pain. Why? Because I want to have mounds of gold? At what cost? Venerable Raṭṭhapāla is asking. At what cost, Dad? Then the previous wives, this is really now interesting. This is the next stage of the trap. The previous wives of the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, disguising and having adorned themselves in various ways, came out and said, "Noble son, what are those celestial nymphs like, for whom you have given up everything to go and lead the celibate holy life?" So they're teasing him. They cannot be possibly as beautiful as we are, they're saying. They adorn themselves in jewelry and who knows how much clothing they're wearing or not, trying to seduce him. Now you also see why Lord Buddha looked at his heart to see if he's untouchable by the daughters of Mara, in a sense. And this response you're going to love. Sisters, I did not go forth to lead the holy life on account of some celestial nymphs. So I didn't do it so that I can be reborn in the divine realm, so that I can be surrounded by nymphs, divine women, for me to have as much sex as I want. That's not the goal of the holy life. Even though many, many, many religious teachers teach that these days, and many of them are actually bhikkhus, sadly. That's how we can tell the sasana is crumbling. But he called them sisters. He didn't call them wives. That's a big blow. That's a big hit. That's a big strike to a woman's ego. One who believes to be very attractive. I mean, after all, you picked her as your wife from so many other women. I'm beautiful, I'm this, I'm that, and you're calling me sister? I'm pausing because when I was a layman years ago, I was in a situation where I was conversing with someone, a woman, and I'm a practitioner of Dhamma, at the time as a layman, and I said I knew where it was, how should I put this? The direction of the conversation was going in a certain way, and I wanted to pull it back towards Dhamma. And I called her sister, just to put the boundaries clear cut so that she doesn't get any, wrong ideas, and she knows where I am. I am not interested in anything. She didn't like it. She got insulted. And she sarcastically said, "Brother." And I didn't, it was funny, but at the same, I felt bad because I didn't want to come across as having hurt her feelings. But I explained to her that I am not interested in anything that she might be. I was still a layman, that's, so if we're talking about Dhamma, we're just talking about Dhamma. Let's not go anywhere. So he calls her sister, them actually, more than one wife. On hearing how he addressed them as sisters, the former wives of the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla from when he was a householder exclaimed, "Our Lord has just called us sisters," and they fell down and fainted. Their egos were crushed. And then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla said to his father, "Householder, if there is food you intend to offer, then simply offer it and do not trouble us any further." Okay, so I'm not here for being, to be harassed by you or anyone. You offered me food, I accepted, and I'm here. Where's the food? If you're not going to offer me food, I will go. I have my bowl. Don't worry, I'll be fine. But I'm not going to put up with this nonsense. And the father goes, "Please eat, my dear Raṭṭhapāla." And with his own hands, his father served and satisfied the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla with nourishing foods and drinks. Later, having finished his meal, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla put aside his bowl, and by getting up from his seat, he uttered these verses. "Behold this fathom-long body." You can tell who he's pointing at his former wives. "All decked, standing upright. Yet it is nothing but a collection of abscesses and sores, pus-filled, pimple-like things, wounds, sores, always subject to disease and sickness, a bundle of unending concerns and worries, always facing the reality of unavoidable and ceaseless instability. Look at the comely form you try to decorate by putting on shiny jewelry and your golden earrings, when all the while you secretly try to hide the skeleton underneath, adorning yourselves with attractive and seductive clothes, painting your feet with red henna, while smearing your face with all kinds of powders and creams. All that may be effective to sell yourselves to deluded fools, but not for those who go searching for what lies beyond on the farther shore. Billions of dollars are spent, mostly by women, but not just women, of course, nowadays, on makeup, on hairdos, hair dyes, clothing, trainers to keep you in shape. What are we hiding? The skeleton underneath that we carry with us, the cemetery that we're always carrying with us. But Venerable Raṭṭhapāla continues, weaving your hair into 8 separate braids, smeared with eyeliners, mascaras, and different shades to seduce with the eyes. All that may be effective to sell yourselves to deluded fools, but not for those who go searching for what lies beyond on the farther shore. So don't try to actually use those maneuvers on me or anyone who is set on going to the farther shore, he's saying. Despite all these ornaments you wear, trying to make it seem like a decorated box of fine ointments, this rotting body of filth, nevertheless, continues to decay. All that may be effective to sell yourselves to deluded fools, but not for those who go searching for what lies beyond on the farther shore. And this, you can tell, he's probably now looking back to his father. He's standing and they're, probably sitting. The women are standing, and he says, the hunter set up his noose, but the deer, despite having eaten the bait, accepted the food, dana. Neither set off the trap nor was caught in its snare. And now I leave. He's the deer. Leaving the hunter who tried to trap me behind, weeping in disarray. What a powerful, powerful lesson for his father and everyone else involved. Then the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, having spoken these verses as he stood in his old family home, left and went back to where his temporary dwelling was, on the deer hunting grounds of King Kauravya of Tulakotita. Once there, he sat under a tree, eager to spend the rest of the day in seclusion. I don't believe I've ever come across another sutta or mention where Venerable Raṭṭhapāla went back to his parents' home. I mean, would you? Highly doubtful, because this was the seal. This was that's it. That's the end. You will never see my face again. Even though I promised that I would come, but after this, what's the point? Meanwhile, this is a different aspect of the whatever was taking place in Tulakotita, that region. Meanwhile, King Kauravya instructed his groundskeeper by saying, the one who was taking care of that huge park, "Friend, deer hunter, clear, tidy up, and prepare the hunting grounds, for we would like to come and spend the day at the park, enjoying its lovely and quiet scenery." And the deer park's groundkeeper quickly went to work cleaning the hunting grounds. And while doing so, he saw the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla seated under a tree, spending the day meditating. So the deer park's groundkeeper went and approached King Kauravya and informed him by saying, by the way, in India, in those days, I don't know how it is now, when a groundskeeper saw a bhikkhu meditating, they would never go and disturb them, because they're always placed at a higher pedestal in society as far as an endeavor is concerned. Even the king is going to come. He does not give himself the right to go and disturb this meditator. Even the king has to bow to that. So he doesn't go and disturb. Today, you know, they will go and like nudge you and with the stick is like, hey, get out of here. The king is going to come. There's respect. You can see. So he goes straight to the king and says, "Great king, as you have requested, the deer hunting grounds are all cleared and ready for your visit. However, there is the clansman Raṭṭhapāla's son, who has been sitting there under a tree, spending the day in meditation. He is the son of the chief clansman of Tulakotita, whom you often have praised and spoken so highly of." So they recognized him. It's interesting how the groundskeeper recognized Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, but his father didn't. Interesting. And the king, when the father saw him, remember when he was coming in for the first time? And the king replied, "In that case, friend groundskeeper, we will postpone our planned leisurely excursion to the park for the day and rearrange it for another time. Instead, today we will go and associate with our good master Raṭṭhapāla." So he's changing his whole itinerary for the day. Then King Kauravya gave away the food that had been prepared to be taken and enjoyed for the day, having all the nourishing and delicious foods and drinks be distributed among all those gathered there. So he gave away the food, and by mounting his royal chariot, and while being accompanied by other members of his court and entourage in their own carriages, he set off from the capital of Tulakotita to go and see the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla at the deer hunting grounds. And in those days, that was a big thing, you know, when especially if you're a king and you have so much wealth and you have so much pleasure that you enjoy, every so often, you know, it becomes interesting. It's almost like reading an unusual book. In this case, a book on spirituality. In this case, however, the spirituality book is a bhikkhu. So it's always interesting because you see kings and princes and maharajas often going and spending some time with bhikkhus to ask about life, about their own lives and understanding. Thus, accompanied by his royal retinue in all its royal splendor, King Kauravya went as far as they could travel by chariots and then dismounted and carried on the rest of the way on foot as they approached the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, and with great haste. In seeing the venerable Raṭṭhapāla, King Kauravya exchanged friendly greetings with him and then stood to one side and said to the venerable Raṭṭhapāla, this is unusual because usually, as you've seen me go over, with you on with suttas, they usually will sit after they pay homage or they bow down. So in this case, the king did not bow on the ground on his knees, but he did it while standing and he's pointing at something. Good sir, Master Raṭṭhapāla, please sit on this elephant rug, as he offered his own seat to him. And in the rug department, or the hide, the animal hide, from what I know in India of those days, the elephant hide was the most expensive than anything else. A jaguar, Bengal tiger, all these things, deer hide. So this would be like the king's prestige, prestigious seat, and he's offering it to him, which is a gesture of respect. That won't be necessary, great king, replied the venerable Raṭṭhapāla, while adding, you go ahead and sit on it. I'm already seated. Then the king sat on the prepared seat with the elephant rug and said to the venerable Raṭṭhapāla, Master Raṭṭhapāla, when people are faced with these 4 kinds of deterioration in life, it is then that they go off and shave their head and beard, put on the maroon robes, and go forth from home life into homelessness. Now, what are these for? So he's basically going to give him a lecture, basically, on, he's surprised, you can tell, that when these things happen, that's when I'm supposed to see a person going forth especially in his youth, like the case is here. So that's where this is leading up to. Master Raṭṭhapāla, it is the deterioration or falling off as a result of aging. So that's number 1. Decay, or when you're losing things. So age, you're losing your youth. Deterioration due to loss of health and the coming on of illnesses. That's number 2. Deterioration due to loss of wealth, and deterioration due to the loss of relations and companionships. So losing money, losing friends and family, people who know you, your connections, obviously the loss of health and aging. Those are the things. And then he takes the time to explain each of these the way he understands it. Now, Master Raṭṭhapāla, the deterioration or falling off as a result of aging comes when one advances in years, while getting nearer and closer to death as one reaches the end of one's life. It takes place when one starts reflecting, I have now become old, aged, and decayed, having come to the end of life. It is not easy for me to make more money, or to accumulate wealth that has not yet been accumulated, nor to increase upon the wealth that I have already worked to accumulate. What if, instead of all this pursuit after worldly gains, I was to shave off my head and beard, put on the maroon robes, and go forth from home life into homelessness? And then, while overcome by old age and all the effects of decay that come along with getting older, one decides to shave off one's head and beard, one's head hair and beard, puts on the maroon robes, and goes forth from home life into homelessness. Now, this, therefore, is seen as a deterioration or falling off as a result of aging. Now, Master Raṭṭhapāla is still quite young, very much in the prime of youth, endowed with his black hair, thus in the first stage of life. In India, there's 3 stages. One stage is when you grow up, through youth, and you get primed. You're making money, this, that, and you're very young still, and that's the moment when your climax of which is you finally find yourself a wife. This is for men, typically. And then from then until the next stage, you go ahead and have children, this and that. So you're making sure the next generation is getting, is there for your parents to become grandparents, so the wealth and the name of the family gets continued. And the last stage is when you have you go and have a spiritual blast, if you will. Go and become a bhikkhu. Go shave your head. That's what you will see in like sadhus and things and yogis you might see pictures of in India. That's when they usually go ahead and give it up, and because they've done it all. So he's saying you're on the first stage still. Like, what are you doing? Why are you a bhikkhu now? Now, if someone were to see or witness that to be the case, then one would have understood why Master Raṭṭhapāla has chosen to go forth from home life into homelessness. Yet, that is not the case here. And what Master Raṭṭhapāla is the deterioration due to loss of health and the coming on of illnesses. When someone becomes gravely ill, they then start reflecting. I am now afflicted with illnesses and overcome by disease. It is not easy for me to make more money or to accumulate wealth that has not yet been accumulated, nor to increase upon the wealth that I have already worked to accumulate. What if instead of all this pursuit after worldly gains, I was to shave off my head hair and beard, put on the maroon robes, and go forth from home life into homelessness? Then, while being afflicted and overcome by disease and illness, one decides to shave one's head and beard, put on the maroon robes, and goes forth from home life into homelessness. This, therefore, is seen as a deterioration or a loss of health. But Master Raṭṭhapāla is still quite young and free from illness, nor is he afflicted by any disorders, as far as I can observe. He is very much in the prime of youth, endowed with a healthy digestion. Because in Indian medicine, Ayurveda, it all starts from your digestion, from your lower intestines. That's the place where you have Agni, the fire. If your digestion is off, meaning it's not working well, which means you're not excreting, you're not getting rid of waste from your gut, that is the reason why most diseases happen. This is primarily the cause. So he's saying when you see this healthy digestion, that means that you should be fine, because that's something that comes in much later in life. That was the norm that they accepted. So your digestion or constitution is neither too hot nor too cold. In Ayurveda, it's called Pitta or Kapha or Vata. So, the way I observe it, Master Raṭṭhapāla is not yet experiencing the deterioration or falling off spoken of as a result of some disease, illness, or health issues. Now, if someone were to see or witness that to be the case, then one could have understood why Master Raṭṭhapāla has chosen to go forth. Yet that is not the case here. And what Master Raṭṭhapāla is the deterioration due to loss of wealth. When someone is rich and wealthy, with the financial resources and the security that comes along with it. Yet, whether gradually or suddenly he comes to lose all the wealth he had, they then start reflecting. In the past, I used to be very rich, affluent, and possessing much financial resources. But now I am bankrupt, having lost it all. It is no longer easy for me to make more money or to accumulate wealth that has not yet been accumulated, nor to increase upon the wealth that I have already worked to accumulate. What if instead of all this pursuit after worldly gains, I was to shave off my head and beard, put on the robes, and go forth? Then, while afflicted and overcome by loss of wealth, one decides to shave one's head and beard, puts on the maroon robes, and goes forth. This, therefore, is seen as a deterioration due to loss of wealth. But Master Raṭṭhapāla comes from a prestigious and affluent family in our society, being the only son of the clan chief of Tulakotita. After all, your family enjoys much wealth and the financial security that is the envy of all other clans of the whole region. So the way I observe it, Master Raṭṭhapāla is not experiencing the loss of wealth, let alone being bankrupt of one's ancestral inheritance. But if one were to see or witness such a thing, then one would have understood. But that is not the case here. And then finally he says, one moment, please. And what, Master Raṭṭhapāla, is the deterioration due to the loss of relations and companionships? When someone has many friends, relatives, and numerous meaningful companionships established in his life, yet, whether gradually or suddenly, he comes to lose them for one reason or another, as they dwindle and fade away, then they start reflecting. In the past, I used to have so many friends, relatives, and numerous meaningful companionships established in my life. But now, I have lost them all, as they all disappeared from my life for one reason or another. Also, it is no longer easy for me to make more money or to accumulate wealth that has not been accumulated. You see how important the money accumulation is in those days, especially coming from the king, Maharaja. At least, even if you lose the wealth, the health, you're old, but if you're still making money, you still have a leg to stand on, as it were. That's what he's saying, because it's always coming up in every single one of these 4 descriptions, apparently. At least you can rely on your money, and the money can bring you, let's say, food and somebody to take care of you, but you don't even have that in that situation. What if instead of all this pursuit after worldly gains, I was to shave off my head and beard and go forth? Then, while overcome by being alone, without any friends, relatives, or companionships left for him to fall back on, one decides to shave one's head and beard, puts on the robes, and goes forth from home life into homelessness. This, therefore, is seen as a deterioration due to the loss of relations and companionships. But Master Raṭṭhapāla comes from a family that has many relatives, with numerous friends and companionships that you have established, especially being the only son of the clan chief of Tulakotita. So the way I observe it, Master Raṭṭhapāla is not experiencing the loss of friends and companions, let alone of family and relatives. But if one were to see or witness such a thing, then one would have understood why Master Raṭṭhapāla has chosen to go forth. That is not the case here. Therefore, Master Raṭṭhapāla, these are the 4 deteriorations which, if one were to face in life, any one of them, then they might choose to shave their head and beard, put on the maroon robes, and go forth from home life into homelessness. But, Master Raṭṭhapāla, none of these are to be seen at present in your case. And this leads me to ask, Master Raṭṭhapāla, this is where his curiosity comes out. What was it that you witnessed, saw, or understood that led you to go forth from home life into homelessness? This is where we're getting the juice, the crux of the main message that moved Venerable Raṭṭhapāla down to his roots when he first heard Lord Buddha speak for the first time, that day when he was about to make the decision. What led him to make the decision? Great King, the Blessed One who knows and sees it all, having attained to the Dhamma, and thus being the perfectly awakened one, has rightly taught the Dhamma while delineating the 4 aspects of existence, which, as I came to listen to him explain, I began seeing, witnessing, and understanding the truth in them, whereupon I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. Now, what are these 4? 1, living in any world is always going to be unstable. Situations inevitably go through unexpected changes while being constantly swept away. This, Great King, is the teaching on the first aspect of existence given by the Blessed One who knows and sees, for he is the accomplished and perfectly awakened one. Therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding its truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. The second one, there is no substantial self, be it great or small, that could wield power in any capacity in existence, or to serve as a refuge or savior for anyone in any world. This is for the Atman and the Mahatman, the great God, the Mahabrahma that they talk about. Or the self, you can just talk about, in Plato's, self, capital S or uppercase S, and the small case self. Even though you might find atheists or secularists or secular Buddhists, as they call themselves, or anyone who says, I don't believe in any religions or spirituality, they nevertheless believe in self. So Lord Buddha just pulled the rug from under that as well, because they consider the self as the place of refuge. I have the power, I'm empowering myself to do this. Nonsense. Everything is changing. There's no substantial self to be talking about that is unchanging. To identify as the thing, the one thing that you can rely on as unchanging, there's no such thing. This great king is the teaching on the second aspect of existence given by the Blessed One who knows and sees. For he is accomplished and the perfectly awakened one. Therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding its truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. Powerful insights that he must have gotten that day. So here comes the third characteristic of existence. No matter what has been acquired in any world, ultimately one can own or possess nothing, becoming destitute, for one is bound to leave it all behind and depart empty-handed. This great king is the teaching on the third aspect of existence given by the Blessed One who knows and sees, for he is the accomplished and perfectly awakened one. Therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding its truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. And fourthly, existence is always engaged with wanting, for one is always in the quest for more, enslaved to ceaseless craving, never to be satiated. This great king is the teaching on the fourth aspect of existence given by the Blessed One, who knows and sees, for he is the accomplished and perfectly awakened one. And therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding its truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. He gave him an honest answer. Hence, great king, when the Blessed One who knows and sees it all, having attained to the Dhamma and thus being the perfectly awakened one, while rightfully teaching the Dhamma, delineated these four aspects of life, I came to listen to him explain each of these one by one. There, I began to see, witness, and understand their truth, at which point I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. Now the king, the Maharaja, Kauravya, is now going to ask him on each of these. And it's beautiful how Venerable Raṭṭhapāla gives him pertinent, tangible, down-to-earth responses, examples from real life that the king would very much relate to. Master Raṭṭhapāla said, so this is the king is asking, living in any world is always going to be unstable. Situations inevitably go through unexpected changes while being constantly swept away. What is the correct way of understanding the full meaning of this statement? Great king, was there a time when you were 20 or even 25 years of age? A time when you found yourself quite skilled at riding elephants, horses, chariots, a master at handling the bow and shooting an arrow, sharp and deadly in fighting with the sword? A period in your life when you had strong arms and legs and firmly believed in and enjoyed going into battle? Ah, Master Raṭṭhapāla, there was indeed such an amazing time in my life when I was 20 or 25 years of age, when I was very skilled at riding elephants, horses, chariots, a master at handling the bow and shooting an arrow, sharp and deadly in fighting with the sword. At that time, I also had strong arms and legs and firmly believed that the best and most important thing for me would be to march into the battle. There was a time indeed when I thought I was invincible and that there could be no one as powerful, let alone more powerful than me. And how about now, great king? Do you still have that strength in your arms and legs, or even the ability to go into the battle presently? Oh no, dear Master Raṭṭhapāla, I'm already withered and weak, having aged and grown old, now reached to the end of life. Presently, I am in my 80th year and can barely stand, because whenever I take a step by putting my foot down, I realize it is not where it is supposed to be. You can ask elderly people in your life, and they will say, yes, I can concur. I know what that feels like. It is just for that reason, great king, that the Blessed One who knows and sees, being the accomplished and perfectly awakened one, gave us the teaching on this first aspect of existence by declaring living in any world is always going to be unstable. Situations inevitably go through unexpected changes while being constantly swept away. So he repeats that, and then the king says, such powerful, these words are so true indeed, Master Raṭṭhapāla, spoken by the Blessed One, who knows and sees, being the accomplished and perfectly awakened one. Such powerful and wonderfully spoken words indeed, because after all, the world truly goes on changing and thus always remains unstable and never the same. But, Master Raṭṭhapāla, in our royal court, we have entire armies of elephants, cavalries of horses, fleets of chariots, and countless squadrons of army foot soldiers. They are always there, ready to protect us from any kinds of threats, to ensure safety for us, always standing by us in times of difficulty or peace. So, when Master Raṭṭhapāla said, there is no substantial, so he's now talking about the second characteristic of existence. There is no substantial self, be it great or small, that could yield power in any capacity in existence or to serve as a refuge or savior for anyone in any world. What is the correct way of understanding the full meaning of this statement? Great king, do you have any chronic illnesses? Yes, Master Raṭṭhapāla, I do have a chronic illness related to the wind element. I added what it means usually. In those days, they used to call it rheumatoid, wind element, which today we can call it rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis. In fact, on certain days, the pain is so intense that it is too much for me to bear. Where my friends, companions, it could also be gas, severe indigestion and all that, which can cause tremendous pain in the gut. Where so much pain for me to bear, where my friends, companions, court advisors, and blood relations all become worried and exclaim to each other, our beloved king, King Kauravya, will surely die from all that pain. Now, this is Venerable Raṭṭhapāla coming back. Great king, is it possible for you to share or give away some of those horribly painful feelings you experience with any of your friends, companions, court advisors, or blood relations, so that you may end up feeling less of that intense pain? Or are you the only one who experiences those intense painful feelings all by yourself? Oh no, Master Raṭṭhapāla, it is impossible to share or give away some of those horribly painful feelings that I experience with any of my friends, companions, court advisors, or blood relations, so that I may end up feeling less of that intense pain. For I am the only one who experiences those intense, painful feelings all by myself. If you've ever had a toothache, or a headache, or any kind of ache, and you have a loved one next to you, you might want to, or they might want to take it away from you to ease your pain. It's impossible. They can try to caress your hair or something, or say something nice, okay, but it's not going to take it away if it's going to last. You're going to be the one who's taking it, the pain, the pressure of it, the intensity of it. So you see, great king, it is just for that reason that the Blessed One who knows and sees, being the accomplished, because all those armies of elephants, chariots, and horse riders, and foot soldiers, and all of that, they can't take away a tiny little bit of that headache you're experiencing. Therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding this truth, I decided to simply go for it. Such powerful and wonderfully spoken words indeed, this is the king, because after all, there is no true safety or security in this world for painful experiences. Therefore, no one could ever truly share the intensity of pain that one must bear alone, having to bear and endure the suffering of chronic illnesses, all on one's own. But Master Raṭṭhapāla, this is the king again, In our royal court, we have limitless wealth with countless amounts of gold, stored with numerous treasure houses, where some are opened and used often, while others are still sealed shut, with no need to be tapped into. So he's so rich, there are treasure houses that are not necessary for him to open and use to support his economy. So when Master Raṭṭhapāla said, no matter what has been acquired in any world, ultimately one can own or possess nothing, because becoming destitute, for one is bound to leave it all behind and depart empty-handed. What is the correct way of understanding the full meaning of this statement? So the king, short-sightedly, is thinking, well, I have all this wealth. No one's going to take it away from me. So how could this statement be true? Could you explain? What am I missing? He's saying. Great king, at present you are well provided for, as you have full access and availability to all sensual enjoyments that you could possibly have, and indulgent through this body with its 5 strands of sensual pleasures: eyes, nose, ears, skin, tongue, taste, all that. Now, would you say that you are certain that in your next or future existence also you will be able to have access to all those enjoyments of the 5 strands of sensuality which you currently have? Or would you have to give away all that you now possess when you are dead and gone to face the consequences of your intentionally committed actions, while letting others take over those resources you once had? This time, though, for their own sensory stimulation that they would enjoy and experience through their body. Indeed, Master Raṭṭhapāla, at present I am well provided for, as I have full access and availability to all sensual enjoyments that I can possibly have and indulge in through this body, with its 5 strands of sensual pleasures. Absolutely, therefore, I cannot be certain that in my next or future existence also I would be able to have access to all those enjoyments of the 5 strands of sensuality which I currently have. So there is a far greater chance, if not a guarantee, that I will most certainly have to give away all that I now possess when I am dead and gone, to face the consequences of my intentionally committed actions, while letting others take over those resources I once had. This time, though, for their own sensory stimulation that they would enjoy and experience through their body. People have come up with first or last name or DNA. They think the DNA or the last name is a guarantee that it's going to be kept in the family, the wealth. Meanwhile, they're avoiding the very big fact, staring at them in the face. And that is, I will give all this up to another person. You will never be able to enjoy it again. So all these kings, royals that have all this wealth, all these incredibly wealthy individuals who are even richer than kings in most cases, they live their lives as if there's never going to be an end to that. Meanwhile, their health is dwindling. Their legs aren't working. They're never at the place where they landed. They wanted it to land. They're not able to enjoy what they enjoyed. And on top of that, they're going to be giving it away. I remember before the Queen of England died, there was an image or footage of her in, I think it was at Westminster Abbey. And she had just buried her husband. This is like this year, I think. And she had been sitting on one of these benches, completely empty. It was only her. Obviously, she's the Queen of England, so she's sitting there. She's at the right edge near the aisle. And you could see all that Venerable Raṭṭhapāla just said on her face. You could read it in her face. Oh boy. Oh boy. I've lived through so many decades. I'm getting closer and closer, because the person I was sharing it with, he's already dead. and you don't want to know where they went. It's pretty bad, because these people, I'm not, not just them, anybody, you don't have to be a king of a country. How you've lived your life. That's why Venerable Raṭṭhapāla brings in those intentionally committed actions. Those are the things that are going to be waiting for you over there, where your land is going to be dictated by your chosen actions. So don't talk to me about your treasure houses that have been sealed shut because you're so wealthy, you're not going to. Don't give yourself that foolish idea. Don't rely on that, King. It is just for that reason, great King, that the Blessed One who knows and sees has said that no matter what has been acquired in any world, ultimately one can own or possess nothing. Even if you were to be reborn in a heavenly realm where the lifetime is a lot longer than human, you will have to give it up. Even if you were to become Indra or Sakka, the king of the gods of the 33, which is one of the most sublime heavenly realms where you can enjoy all your 5 senses to the fullest. After those eons have passed, you will die and leave it all behind. Many of us have actually been Sakka. We've enjoyed incredible wealth, luxuries, indulgences, all these things, and we've given them all up because of this thing called anicca, impermanence. And therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding this truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. These words are so true indeed, Master Raṭṭhapāla. This is the King, spoken by the Blessed One, who knows and sees. Such powerful and wonderfully spoken words indeed, because after all, destitute is the world, poor is the world. There can be no owner for all that one owns or possesses. One has to leave it all behind and continue to face alone whatever waits for him beyond death. And when so now is the last portion. And when Master Raṭṭhapāla said, existence is always engaged with wanting, for one is always in the quest for more, enslaved to ceaseless craving, never to be satiated. What is the correct meaning of understanding the full meaning of this? What is the correct way of understanding the full meaning of this statement, rather? Great King, the vast Kuru country, which is under your rulership, is it prosperous? Yes, Master Raṭṭhapāla, the Kuru country that is under my sole rulership, you can tell, it's like I'm the king, is prosperous indeed. Now imagine, great King, that someone whose word you trust comes to you from the east and informs you, great King, you must know this. In the east, there is a state that is very prosperous, abundant in resources, and densely populated, which means you're going to be able to tax them. More money is going to be coming in. It has a large army of elephants, a vast fleet of horses, a great fleet of chariots, a large squadron of army foot soldiers. There is a great possibility for you to turn it into your loot, ready for the taking, along with its vast resources of gold and silver, as well as all the women you can capture and make part of your harem. Further, my great King, I can tell you with certainty, therefore, how it is highly plausible that you could easily take and make that country your own with the available army and military might you currently possess. Now, great King, this is Venerable Raṭṭhapāla coming. If you heard all this from a highly reliable source, one that you fully trust, what would you do? And this is where we see the essence of the King. Oh, Master Raṭṭhapāla, I would surely strike and take over that country and become its ruler as well. And imagine further, great King, that someone else whose word you also trust comes to you from the west, and another from the north, and another from the south, and each informs you the same thing. So he's repeating that. So now, great King, if you heard all this from highly reliable sources, ones that you fully trust, what would you do? Oh, Master Raṭṭhapāla, I would surely strike each and every one of them and take over those countries and become their ruler as well. So you see, great King, it is just for that reason that the Blessed One who knows and sees, being the accomplished and perfectly awakened one, gave us the teaching on this fourth aspect of existence by declaring, existence is always engaged with wanting, for one is always in the quest for more, enslaved to ceaseless craving, never to be satiated. Therefore, in seeing, witnessing, and understanding this truth, I decided to simply go forth from home life into homelessness. You see the world today, especially Western countries, wealthy countries, trying to dominate, countries that are trying to get up. They've been crawling. They want to be independent, like especially in the case of, I think nowadays, the culture of the week or the day, like they say, soup du jour. Now it's become Africa because of all the wealth that Africa has had for centuries. Western countries have been depleting it. So now finally they're getting up, and look at the audacity of the rich countries that have been vacuuming it clean, starving the people. They still want more. I see the same Maharaja's attitude in all these. Again, this is not just about Western countries. It could be tomorrow the Eastern countries, if you will. It's just that greed that Lord Buddha is talking about. It's never satiated. You want more. The man has everything. He has a whole entire kingdom, but still, like he heard that, oh, there's a possibility I can get a bigger. Yeah, I'm in. I want to get it. This is tanha. This is what we call craving, the thirst for more. These words are so true indeed, Master Raṭṭhapāla, spoken by the Blessed One, who knows and sees, the accomplished and perfectly awakened one. Such powerful and wonderfully spoken words indeed, because the world is always craving this or that, with a voracious appetite that cannot be satiated. He even recognizes it now in himself, the king. Then, having said these words, the Venerable Raṭṭhapāla uttered these verses. I see people in the world, rich, wealthy, and lost in their abundance. But being blinded by their greed, they refuse to give anything, living so attached to what they have amassed. Unwilling to share or part ways with their possessions, following their ravenous appetite for more riches, they look for more ways to indulge themselves in sense pleasures. Meanwhile, they continue to hoard all they could grab and steal from others. The ruler who conquers by force, occupying and ruling over a vast territory, is still not content, despite having an empire spanning from sea to sea. Full of longing for more, he looks for ways to still expand his domain, eyeing those realms which are beyond his reach, coveting more territories, no matter the means. But it is not just the common folk or regular people that will die, for death is also the lot of rulers and kings, who sooner or later will all go to join the caravan of the unsatiated, the faithful prisoners of unsatisfied craving that continues beating in their hearts. Yet they leave all their bodies behind, with which they had done so much in their blind dedication and service to the flesh, blindly following their quest for more pleasurable stimulations, which could never be fulfilled. Meanwhile, families and relatives come to wail with disheveled hair, seeing them rolled up and wrapped in a single cloth, and now being carried away on their one-way trip to be placed on some firewood, to be burnt all the way to the bone. While others stand there in shock, lamenting in grief as they realize the bitter truth. Those who are now dead, despite what they believed, were not immortal after all, indeed. Leaving all assets and all that was acquired behind in the unreachable abyss, straight to the funeral pyre one goes, while covered up with nothing but shrouds. The dead, lying flat on their back, have no more possessions or stations of power left for them to seize, with no loved ones either, relatives, companionships to become one's refuge, or friends to find shelter in, no matter how desperately they seek. Their heirs, in the meantime, come and carry away his wealth, which has now become their loot. As he goes, however, being pulled away, never to see or enjoy them again. After all, the dead will always travel alone, unable to take with them anything, not their wives, children, kingdom, or name, except, of course, the weight of all that they have done. Long life can never be gained through the wealth one may possess, nor can he pay his way to get rid of decay or eliminate old age. Meanwhile, the wise teach again and again how this life we live is indeed short, for it truly is impermanent, never eternal, but ever changing. The truth of this is felt and touched by both rich and poor, where the wise and the fool all feel it too. But while the fool gets pulled into it by his idiocy, drowning in its woes, no wise sage, however, feels agitated or trembles at the sight of death. True wealth, therefore, is found not in acquiring things, but in gaining wisdom, which is the only way one can taste true freedom. Yet, due to their persistence in remaining ignorant, so many refuse to pursue the path, and instead keep moving and loitering around, while committing evil in this life, than doing the same in the next. But the one who re-enters the womb is led by delusion, floating in samsara and moving from one world to another, identifying with each one of those existences as his very own heritage. Meanwhile, other fools lacking in wisdom, who gullibly take his words to be true, also fall into the trap, just like him, and go from womb to womb, caught in the snare of perpetual samsara. Much like the robber who is caught red-handed must face the consequences for his wrongful actions, so must all those who, while alive, though might somehow manage to get away from facing what they have done and paying for their evil deeds, they will surely be made to suffer, and dearly so, for all they have intentionally committed. Thus, the evildoer is destroyed by his very own actions in the next world, if not in this one. Sensuality is vivid, enticing, and pleasant, always comes disguised to win over the heart, disturbing it. O great king, seeing the many dangers of sensuality, I went forth. Just like fruits on a tree, humans too fall, every single one, when the body breaks down and death arrives, taking with it both the young and the old. Seeing this too, I went forth, O king, seeing clearly the choice to become a recluse as the best of all. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You see, a beautiful sutta. I highly recommend reading it, and I know I read it in, I went over it just one session, but it's rather unfair that we had to do it in one, but I wanted to do it because it's also unfair to kind of give it in chunks because it's so beautiful. So to remedy that, I highly recommend that you read it on your own or listen to it once it's uploaded. Try to see if you could find yourself somewhere in there. So I'll stop here and see if there are any questions. Also from here, if there are any. guess no questions. Oh, yes, yes.
Can I ask? Thank you, Bhante.
Mhm.
I just want to ask, what's the correct way of understanding Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's reaction to his parents denying him permission? Can we understand that as, or I don't really know how to correctly interpret his reaction. I mean, could it be interpreted as a disrespect to his parents, or is that just the strength of his faith and confidence, or yeah, just curious about that.
A valid question, I think. However, had it been disrespect, he would have just walked away and said to Lord Buddha, let's say, I have permission. Of course, Lord Buddha would have known, but that's one obvious way that he could have disrespected them, or he would have engaged in an argument, or or even said some mean words, but he didn't, from what we read in the sutta. Instead, he basically said, this is it, I found my path. I think that's also a gift, because you're not beating around the bush. You're not telling your parents, okay, I'll do what you say, but I'm going to continue being miserable. You want grandchildren? Okay, I'll give them to you, but I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to make you pay for it. Like countless people I've met in my life, especially as a therapist. People I've seen, even friends, acquaintances, where they would come, well, I got married because I wanted to please my parents, but I, and I have these 3 children, I have these 2 kids, and I can't wait for them to be 18, and then I'm going to just divorce him. And what? That's poison. That's disrespect. Not just only for your parents, for your mate, and most importantly, I think, to your children. They didn't ask to be reborn through you. Why did you volunteer? Miss or Mr. Resentful? And now you pull them into this hell. They didn't do anything to you, well, I think. So there's another way of, what I think it was very courageous of Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, because he's also caught between a rock and a hard place. You can see he respects them. I mean, look at him. He became an Arahant. The first thing he does, he goes back. He goes, where does he go? That's why I wanted to make a point where I said he didn't go Pindapada to different houses in the village. He went straight to his home. He wanted to give them the opportunity. First, he respected them. He respected his word. He held his word. He was true to his word. But look what happened. The disrespect was actually shown through and through by his parents, in fact. Because they actually had their own desire placed above his goal. They had to go to his friends as if the son's word was not enough. He's saying to them several times, repeatedly, this is what I want, mom and dad, this is what I want. And he's not a child, mind you. He's not a teenager. He's married. I mean, he has wives there. But he's still asking for their, approval. That itself is such a powerful thing. Like, if I were a parent, for example, I would have said, wait a minute, you made up your mind and you're about to do it, but you've come to me so that I give you a permission. It's just a word. You want just a word? Now, it would have been disrespectful, I would say, had he had no one to take care of his parents, and they're destitute, they're poor, there's no food coming in and nothing, they're going to starve to death. And he would just say, hey, I'm just, I'm going to take off and become a bhikkhu. That, I would see it as disrespectful. But I fail to see any disrespect manifested on part of Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, both as a layman in coming and asking, and asking for their permission, and also in his agreement to their conditions. You know, the agreement that yeah, sure, I'll come. But he set his priority. And you could tell if you see someone who has come to that point in life where they know that they have found the thing, the purpose of life, you could see it in their eyes. And plus, this is your son that you've known for over 20 years. And we know 20 because you have to be at least 20 years old to become a bhikkhu. So that's also, we understand the fact that he was over 20 years old. So he was no longer a child. You can't be a bhikkhu, you know, if you're at the very, you know, at least 20, and younger you can't be. So you have to be 20 and above. So there's that. So so many opportunities were wasted by the parents, I think, in the story. But this is a poignant story. Many people, again, and many people have idolized, romanticized this story. In a sense, you go to Sri Lanka, you go to other places, villages, and many families have several boys, several children. And so they can, quote unquote, afford to give away, to allow one of their boys or more to go to the vihara, to the temple, to become, you know, a samanera. But that's not doing it for the correct reason. Often the case is, not just in Sri Lanka, of course, other Asian countries, South Asian. They're just looking for a way out for free education, possibility for the son to go and become a big bhikkhu somewhere in Europe and in the West, buy property in Sri Lanka. So all these things, they've romanticized, because I say this because they go back and look at the Sutta of Raṭṭhapāla and they say, see, I gave permission to my child to become, you know, to go forth. Yeah, see? Yeah, but let's look underneath the table. What's really happening? What's your angle? Many people go and become bhikkhus nowadays, craving power, dying to obtain prestige and gold and silver and a visa and a green card and a citizenship and a nice temple. This is not just, you know, a small minority. I'm talking, this is a majority, the majority, in fact. Very rarely do you find a person who truly does it because of reaching that point in their life where they say, this is it. And they have a lot to lose. The other ones, they don't have anything to lose. In fact, they have everything to gain, because the parents can't feed that many mouths to start. Plus, they're getting free education. And plus, there's a big chance that they're going to go overseas and send them visas so that the whole family could go and stay there and become citizens of that country, a wealthy country. Countless have been the conversations where I sadly found myself in, where I saw this happen in front of me. I've met people. This is the majority, by the way. Majority. This is not the reason why we are supposed to become bhikkhus. Or the other aspect of it, in the case of Westerners, they follow the example of what the king, the Maharaja, was giving. Their health has lost its luster. They're gotten old. Many people went and became bhikkhus on a wheelchair. Westerners. Well, you can't do that. Why? Because now you're going to be a burden on the other bhikkhus. There are rules against that. But guess what? They opened up their bank account, their savings. Bhante, you know, I have this much to the abbot. I have this much savings. I don't have anyone, and I really don't want to go into a nursing home. And I've been very close to Buddhism, this and that. So it was my dream to become a bhikkhu, and I'm retired. My wife died 2 years ago. How convenient. This is not being cruel. I don't think I'm being cold. I'm being factual. Unless the bhikkhu ended up having an accident after ordination. There's these things, and there's the other aspect of people wanting to become bhikkhus so that they can make a name for themselves, become a teacher, have a presence, sell books, be famous. To me, it's as low as the first one. Actually, it's a little bit lower than the first category I mentioned, where the child has no control. The parents are at fault to put this child, and then this child turns 20 or even younger, and they have all these desires. That's the last thing on their mind, to go and practice meditation. Are you kidding? That's why most bhikkhus don't practice proper meditation. That's why it's easier to fall into the groove of chanting. It's easy, especially if you've learned it when you were a child. Are you kidding me? It's like a jukebox. You just like, okay, you start, and all of a sudden they go with the chanting. I've asked people like, Bhante, do you know what you're saying? They don't know the Pali. I felt bad as a Westerner to try to explain, and that makes them feel uncomfortable. Now, don't get me wrong, in Asia, you do have every once in a while, not just in Asia, of course, but in Asia, because I was talking about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka comes to mind. Bhante Nyanananda is a perfect example of the ideal bhikkhu. He had it all. He had his dissertation. His heart was throbbing Dhamma. He gave it all up. He became a bhikkhu. He pursued it. He never felt the need to go to the West to apply for a visa, as far as I know. There's no Dhamma talks of him in Los Angeles, in New York, in London, in Switzerland, standing in front of this beautiful monastery that people have donated. He was in his tiny little kuti. In fact, wherever he was persecuted because he didn't fit the mold of the others. And that's what we've come to. The true bhikkhus are not the majority. You need to find a bhikkhu. You want to find a bhikkhu, you go and you expect yourself to be going and looking with a set of tweezers and a big magnifying glass, because they're the true minority. And they're the ones who will actually wait for the permission of the parents, which is the highest form of paying respect, because Lord Buddha says it again and again. There's one way you can repay your parents, only one. And that is when your heart is dedicated to the Dhamma. And if you're lucky, they're fortunate, you could teach them a few Dhamma lessons. And there he was, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, with his presence, and then finally gave them those verses. I hope that did something to them, but I have not come across anything in the suttas that tell me for certain that they had a change of heart after having heard their son, after hurting him so badly, trying to trap and ensnare your own child to simply please your own ego and your fear that, oh my God, where's all this gold going to go? The neighbors? There was no love there on the part of the parents. They didn't care for Raṭṭhapāla. They cared for, well, who's going to have this? That's why Venerable Raṭṭhapāla mentioned lamentation, depression, and anguish. I don't see gold. I see fear. You're terrified that no one's going to end up, your bloodline is going to be lost. And the wealth that you've accumulated greedily is going to be gone. So I hope that was somewhat close to a satisfactory answer to your question.
Thank you. Yes, very satisfactory.
Good. Well, my throat is kind of giving, ways, but If there are any questions later on, you could please send them our way. But let us transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahitika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Lokasas. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahindika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahindika Punyantam anumoditva chirang rakantu mam paranti. Sam. May you be well. May the triple gem bless you all. And may the Raṭṭhapāla in you be joyful and pursuing on the path. Again, as I said in the beginning, this is not just about those of us who have gone forth or thinking of going forth. This is about everyone. We go forth by renouncing our attachment to ideas, narratives, my version of me, who I accept myself to be, my goals, this and that, and as measured by the level of pain I have been inducing upon myself because of those. Renouncing those, that is what we are going forth from. So please be aware of that. This is for everyone. So until next week, Sukhi Hotu.